So let's get into the overview of design thinking. So what is design thinking? It's an approach to problem solving by being human-centered. Human-centered is a key phrase here. So really trying to understand what people want, empathize, deeply understand their needs and wants and feelings, right? And so there are three key elements, and at the intersection of these key elements, the design innovation happens. The first one obviously is the human values are being human-centered. To really make sure whatever problem you're solving is based upon some deep understanding, empathy, and insight from how people do things and how they would want to do things. And again, to make sure that solution is extremely usable, extremely, and then to really make sure that that solution delights people. It's very desirable as well. So that's the human value part. But as a human value, I may want to fly from San Francisco to Mumbai in 6 hours. That's what I want. I don't want 20, 25 hours worth of travel. But is it technologically feasible today? That's the next part. Is it technologically feasible? So you have to figure that out. Maybe there is a technology that is possible. That's what Elon Musk is doing. He's trying to build a system where it could take people from San Francisco to LA, Los Angeles, within 1 to 2 hours, pretty much at the speed of airplane, without going through all the airport hassles, right? So is there technology that either is available or can you build it? That's the second part. And the third thing is, even if somebody builds it, even if somebody builds an ultra supersonic plane or a system that takes me from San Francisco to Mumbai in 6 hours, and even if there is a technology developed, is it economically viable? Because that technology may be expensive, initially at least, right? And if it is expensive, will people pay enough for that benefit of reaching there faster? Significantly enough, right? Significantly more to be able to make that a viable business. And unless these three elements are intersecting, you don't have opportunity of a design innovation. I just wanted to make sure we stress that out. Okay, so let's get into deeper. What is design thinking? Design thinking is a human-centric, possibility-driven, option-focused, and iterative approach to problem solving. Each word is loaded here. Human-centric. Again, we're talking about understanding the customer or end user deeply, their needs and wants and feelings and contradictions and tensions. Really understand it. And why. Why they face what they face, why they want what they want. So that's one. Then possibility driven. What does that mean? Possibility driven means don't get constrained by today's limitations or the limitations of today's paradigm. Otherwise, you will ask for a faster horse. So think about what, if anything, is possible. And then try to come up with a solution. And then obviously, then you have to figure out, okay, do you have technology to support that? Then the next thing is option focused. You may come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of great ideas. Some of them may be crazy, but crazy good. Some of them may be very safe. But which ones to pick? Because you cannot build everything. Otherwise, it becomes a Swiss Army knife. So again, option focused. You have to make trade-offs here. And then last but not the least is iterative approach of problem solving. So it is not like one and done. You have to continue to keep doing this, because then you are continuing to get insights and you are continuing to build product and functionalities that are actually solving problems in a much, much deeper fashion. So what does it do? It helps you explore the unknown and identify both implicit and explicit needs, or articulated and unarticulated needs, to deliver breakthrough innovation. So if you find unarticulated need and your competition talks to the same customers, but they don't identify those unarticulated needs, they just understand what the customer is telling them, what happens? You're gonna build a lot more superior product and a lot more differentiated product, and then you can charge the premium. It's the difference between BlackBerry and iPhone. So in a simplest form, it is about two things. One is the mindset, and other is the process of solving the problem. The mindset of solving the problem and the process of solving the problem. So let's look at each one of them. Let's talk about mindset. And there are a few things which are critical to make sure you have the right mindset to solve the problem. One is understand your user. So look at Richard Branson, the CEO and chairman of Virgin Group. What is he doing? He's actually in a flight serving people. So he's getting inside two ways. He's able to interact with the customers in that flight at that 35,000 feet and really understand how people behave. And number two, he's also able to empathize what his employees also go through, so that you can actually make and create a lot better way of serving the customer and also make it easy for your employees to be able to serve them. Okay, understand your user, be in their shoes. That's what they call it as day in a customer's life. Be out in the real world. If you sit in the office and try to extrapolate and think about what the end user needs, you will never get it. You have to get it out there and be there with them. There's a term that pragmatic marketing uses. It is called nihito, N-I-H-I-T-O. What does that mean? Nothing important happens inside the office. Get out there. Talk to people, observe people. Be out in real world. That's the second thing. So again, mindset. These things are important. If you don't have the mindset, nothing else will happen. Embrace ambiguity. You will never have perfect data. Nobody has perfect data. You will still need to make judgment calls and decisions based upon imperfect data. And then there has to be a bias towards action. So instead of continuing to think and continuing to come up with strategies, there has to be bias towards action. Build something quickly. Draw something. Don't even build a product. Draw something on a piece of paper. Show it to somebody. Use a paper and a scissor to show a little bit more. There has to be a bias towards action, because people will give you a lot more feedback just by looking at it, just by looking at the low fidelity sketches you may be showing them. And then suspend judgment, especially during ideation. When your team is trying to come up with an idea, we are very good at shooting people down, very, very good. So if somebody tells you an idea to solve the problem, we immediately jump with multiple things. Oh, that's not going to work. Oh, that was tried before. Suspend judgment. Let the ideas keep flowing. Only thing you can do is to build on somebody's idea. Don't shoot it down. Don't shoot it down. That is not the phase in which you should be giving any judgment. So these elements are extremely critical for you to be able to identify and understand sort of the key insights and the key needs. And then the process comes into play. The process comes into play. The first step is empathize. And here, what you're doing is you're flaring. That means you're broadening your horizon. And then you're focusing. That means you're narrowing your choices. So you're creating choices, and then you're making choices. And you're kind of going that back and forth. So the first phase is empathize, where you are creating choices. You're really trying to get as many data points as you can by talking to people, by observing, by doing ethnographic interviews, and really trying to understand the needs and wants and feelings and tensions and contradictions. Once you have that, then you're saying, okay, I got enough understanding. What are my key insights? What are my key insights? And what problem I'm going to solve? So you're trying to define that problem. You're trying to now focus, because you can't solve everything. You're trying to define what problem you're going to solve. Okay, so that's the second part, second stage. Once you define what problem you're going to solve, then you again flare or start creating choices. What are different ways of solving the problem? Some of them could be simplest and more safe. Some of them could be radical. Some of them could be extremely innovative. Let all the ideas flow in, because you're trying to create choices. You're not going to pass judgment and shoot the ideas down. Get as many ideas as possible. And then once you have a lot of ideas, at that point, you have a lot of ways to solve the problem, but you cannot use each one of them. So what you're going to do at that point is, again, go back to focusing and making choices, because you cannot build everything. So at that point, you're going to pick one or two elements that will allow you to build a prototype, and then you start building the prototype. So I'm going to double click a little bit each one of these. So let's talk about empathize. So again, here in the empathize phase, you're going on a journey of exploration. If you look at the diagram, again, if it is you and your competition, and if both of you are talking, and if both of you understand only the explicit or unarticulated needs, you actually only understand the tip of the iceberg that is visible from outside. There is a lot more underneath water, a lot more. Okay, and those who understand that, they're going to build far more superior product than those who don't. So that's the key here. And so there are different techniques. You know, you can observe people. There is a quote from Yogi Berra. You can observe, you can learn a lot just by simply observing people. Just observe, what are they doing? Why are they doing? Where are they doing? What are they interacting with? And why? Again, ask this question to yourself, right? Sometimes you can do informal public observations. Sometimes you can do formal observation by, which is called job shadowing. So you're kind of being there with somebody all day or several days and really trying to understand what happens in that particular job and what kind of pain points and tensions they go through. I mean, doctors have, a lot of these job shadowing interns oftentimes. Other things you can do is ethnographic interviews. Sit down and talk to people. So one thing I will tell you is great insights will typically come from, talking to people and really going deep. So there are two types of techniques people use: qualitative research and quantitative research. The qualitative research will always give you deep insight. The quantitative research, which is survey, that will not give you deep insight. That will allow you to actually validate that the insight you found through qualitative research is now applicable or valid for a large group of people. So it gives you a little bit more market validation in that case. But you will not get deep insight through surveys. You can, again, conduct focus groups or discussion groups. These are different techniques. I'm going to double click towards next few slides, the best practices for doing effective ethnographic interviews in a lot more details. But the principle apply to pretty much every element that I talk here. So I'm going to go deeper on that one. So hold on there. So the next step, once you actually went through empathize and once you have a lot of data, right? Once you have a lot of data, you have to now synthesize your data or your research. What is your research? You are understanding the needs and wants and feelings, surprises, contradictions, tensions. Tensions are good. Why tensions are good? Tensions are good because they may be exposing some insights. They may be exposing some insights, right? But once you have all this research, how do you synthesize that research and really start defining and framing what problem you're solving? So I'll give you an example. In US, there was a study that was made, and typically this kind of, framing the problem starts with the phrase called, how might we? How might we? Okay, so the initial problem, the way they framed was, how might we educate teenage girls in US, the importance of eating healthy food, right? So that was their initial assessment. But then they talked to people. They understood their needs and wants and feelings and so forth. And they realized that actually the insight is completely different. The insight was that these girls they fully understood the benefits of eating healthy. So it's not that they needed any education about why you should be eating healthy. But the problem was different. The problem was they felt they had insecurities, or they felt that if they pick super healthy options like salads, they will be perceived uncool by their peers. And if they're perceived uncool or not cool, and they're not socially acceptable, that was not acceptable for them. That risk. So again, the biggest insight here was the social risk was much higher than the health risk. So they had to reframe that problem in terms of how might we educate teenage girls that it is socially acceptable to eat healthy. So again, this is how you look at the data, and then you synthesize, and then you look at the key insight, and you frame and define your problem correctly. So once you define your problem, now you are going and again creating choices or flaring, creating choices, different ways of solving the problem. So Thomas Edison, what did he say? To have a great idea, have a lot of them. So again, go for quantity here. Do not pass judgment. Come up with, I mean, a lot of times we do ideation session in our own company, and I give like 2 to 3 minutes for the team to create as many ideas as possible. Usually the first iteration, they will come up with 10 to 20 ideas. And then once they know the process, next time you give the same thing, they'll come up with 60 ideas in just 2 to 3 minutes. People behave a lot differently in a resource constrained environment, and when nobody is passing judgment, they actually produce tremendous and lots of ideas. The next thing is once you have different ways of solving, you cannot implement each one of them. It's not possible. You're again now going back to focusing instead of flaring. You're trying to make trade-offs. You're trying to make hard choices. And the way you do that is you pick the ones that you think are the most desirable based upon the data that you have, and you create a low fidelity rapid prototype. 2 things here, two keywords: rapid. Speed is important. And second is low fidelity. Why low fidelity? Because if you create high fidelity prototype, and if you start showing it to customers, when they look at it, deep in their mind, they already know that you put a lot of effort into it. So they are going to try to be nice, just human nature. And they are not going to be as blunt in giving the feedback as they should, because they already know you invested quite a bit in this. So they're just trying to be nice. On the other hand, if you just draw some sketches on the paper, they know that you didn't put much time there. So they, in order for you to redraw, it won't take much time. So they will give you a lot more blunt and honest feedback. So again, there are multiple reasons why rapid prototyping and low fidelity is critical. So Tim Brennan, who is in charge of Apple's creative services group at one point, right? So there was a question asked to him. From looking at something which is a mystery or unknown to really figure everything out and then get to a point where you are creating and capturing value in terms of dollars. What's the process look like? And he draws this picture. So in a way, he's telling that it's spaghetti. It's the process cannot be defined, right? That's dangerous, actually. If you look at it, that's very, very dangerous, because it can lead to long cycles of exploration that produce no results. Long cycle of exploration that produce no results. So how can we demystify the process of creativity? So this is the framework. We have to look at 4 key elements. First is what is, then what if, then what was, and then what works. So let's look at what is. In what is, you're looking at what the current reality is. You're deeply empathizing with the users, observe the users and their interaction with products and each other, understand their needs and wants and feelings. I cannot overstate feelings. Even though it may be very obvious, a customer may be very frustrated. We started asking in one of my previous company that question, once we feel like a customer has a huge pain point with our product, how does it feel? And then in several calls, the reaction was stunning, and the product managers actually got a complete shock, and they were in a lot better situation to be able to empathize the customer. One customer started crying. She said, for you, it's a bug. If you cannot generate a report for payroll, for me on a Friday, if I cannot generate a report for my CFO, he doesn't understand that the technology is not supporting it, or technology is not working. For him, I'm failing. And she started crying. And when that happens, people start empathizing a lot better and understanding deeply what the end user goes for. So the what is very important, right? So that's one. Second is, what if? What if anything was possible? Because don't think about the constraints of today's paradigm. Otherwise, you will come up with what? You will come up with incremental solutions. So if it takes 20 to 24 hours to go from here to San Francisco to Mumbai, you're like, okay, let's cut that down. Maybe let's create a little more fuel efficient plane, which there are now few, where you can take a single flight instead of a stopover somewhere. And so that will cut it down to 18 hours, 17 hours. That's incremental way of thinking. What if anything was possible? What if you could do it in 6 hours? Think about possibilities instead of constraint. Brainstorm a wide array of ideas to solve the problem, right? This is where, again, you are creating choices. You're flaring up. And then what wows? Now you cannot implement each one of them. So you have to really look at what will delight, what will wow the customer. That's where you start making, the trade-offs. And it's hard. And I told you what Steve Jobs said. In order to do 2 or 3 things really, really well, you have to say no to 1,000 other things. This is a tough call. Then last but not the least is what works. So if all of the first 3 are kind of done well, then you still have to test and see that it works. And you can do that by creating low fidelity prototype, test with the clients. Even if you fail early, so that you can continue to refine and make that as an iterative process. So to go back to our definition, design thinking is a human-centric, again, the what is part, possibility-driven, what if part, option-focused, what wows, and iterative approach. Again, create the prototype, show, get feedback, do it again. 2 problem solving.